to Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Wait, does Pride start on June 3rd? I guess it's the whole month, right?
Yeah. What? Why are you trying to shorten this down? Why are you trying to limit this?
Our Pride Festival happens in September is why. So.
Oh, well.
Yeah. You know.
We can keep it going until then.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, happy Pride. My goodness. Yeah. Happy Pride. Happy June. Happy Indigenous Solidarity Heritage Month. I don't know. What is it called? Fucking Happy Indigenous Month.
There's a lot going on.
That's not what it's called.
There's a lot going on. Lots to celebrate. And then also, of course, lots to continue resisting.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any of the footage from your favorite award show, the Canadian Screen Awards?
Oh, I did not. No, I mean, I guess I'm not being asked to comment on it this year for Canadaland, so why would I watch it?
Oh, sad. What happened there?
Well, Canadaland?
It was a joke. Yeah, at the Canadian
I'm tired,
Screen
okay? You're going to get me over and over tonight.
Yeah, I see that. But you know what? I understand because I did hear that you handed in your book this week. So congratulations. But before we get into real congratulations, the reason why I was asking that is because some of the winners at the Canadian Screen Awards, noted their solidarity, which is, what people should be doing with their power and visibility in this moment. And so I just wanted to shout that out. It was good to see that happening at the Canadian Screen Awards. So.
That's awesome. And were any of them like shouted down the way that we saw at the Politics in the Pen event for the best in political writing in Canada?
No, not that I know of, not that I've seen. But to be honest, I did not watch the Screen Awards in full. I saw the highlights on mute on my phone with subtitles. So possibly, but not that was immediately noticeable from those highlights.
Oh, okay. I'll take it.
Taken. And congratulations on submitting your book.
Yeah. It has been such a bonkers week, and there's a bunch of stuff that I want to mention from it. And so I don't know, maybe we should do some gratefulness before I get into my dumping of information.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I'm into gratefulness. Do we have some folks to thank this week?
Yes. Thank you so much to everybody who checked out the podcast for the first time this week. I've been around, on the road a lot. And because the statistics that I see are sometimes place-based, I can see that folks are listening to the podcast as a result. So if you're a new listener, because you came across Sandy and Nora in the last couple of weeks, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're awesome. Just like folks who have been listening to us for a long, long time, you're awesome too. And thanks to everybody who's shared the podcast and told their friends and said it's amazing. And especially this week, thank you to everyone who changed their donation or donated for the first time. Specifically, thank you to Shannon, DK, Stance, Nicole, Kit, Eric, Kate, Christopher, and Shiny Shoes. Thank you all so much.
Hey, thank you so much. And to be even more specific about that news I was just mentioning from the Canadian Screen Awards, it was Amrit Kaur who received the award for Best Performance in a Leading Role for Fazia Mirza's film The Queen of My Dreams, who noted that she was nervous about speaking up, but just said that she needed to speak up, and she called for a free Palestine at the end of her remarks in her thank you speech.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so wonderful. Thank you for doing that. And thanks to anyone else who's tried to raise these issues or who has raised these issues in whatever location they find themselves.
Yeah. And, no thank you to the University of Toronto who filed an injunction to try to get the encampment at the University of Toronto removed. And that court date has been set for, I think, June 19th or something like that. Is that correct? June 19th?
Yeah.
Which means that, if depending on what's going on with the encampment, depending on what else happens on campus, that encampment could last, through that time. So U of T did give a deadline, and that deadline has passed. The Toronto Police Service has said that they will not go in without an order or a trespass order and to go in and do that sort of removal. So I suppose we'll see what happens with that injunction. I imagine it will be a similar response to the McGill injunction, but I suppose we'll see if there's anything different. But I imagine that the University of Toronto will lose that fight. So, la luta continua, and stay strong to all of the students, faculty, and workers, and community members who remain at the University of Toronto's campus and the other encampments across the country doing the good work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listeners to the Daily News last week will know that I recorded one of the episodes while sitting at the encampment at the University of Toronto, beautifully under a tree that was full of birds that were chirping and sounds of people passing by. It is so impressive. If you have the chance to check out a local encampment, you definitely should go and find out if there's any rules or anything that you need to know in advance, so you don't just kind of show up. At the U of T one, they actually have opening hours for the public, so make sure you don't go too late, because it'll be too late and people are going to be powering down for the night and you won't be able to get in. I have to say, it was an amazing 2 days that I spent at this encampment. It was so wonderful. Oh my God. Okay. So I haven't been able to get to encampments very much because I live in Quebec City. Shout out to the folks in Quebec City that tried to set up an encampment this past weekend. It was shut down by the SPVQ really quickly under the guise of you can't camp in public parks. And then they said that the university is a public park, which is kind of weird, but they are actually really, really vicious about stopping people from camping in public parks. So that at least kind of checks out. And unfortunately, it didn't get going. It didn't get past the first couple of hours. The University of Toronto encampment is so amazing. It's such a beautiful space. It's so well run. It's clean. It's organized. There are so many people coming in and out with offers of solidarity and donations. And I got to do a teach-in, Sandy, on student politics and student activism.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah. So shout out to all the students that I got to meet doing that. It was so fun and cool. And all the students were at U of T except for one student who was at my former school. And so we got to talk about student politics in a really deep way and demystify boards of governors and governing council and the $1 million question, why are these institutions so shitty? And Sandy, I will ask you, why won't they do what is seemingly simple, which is to just divulge their their investments?
I mean, isn't it obvious? Because they know that if they have to divulge those investments, that there's going to be all hell to pay, because they are investing in things that are unethical. They know that the campus won't like it. They know that the public won't like it. And they're public institutions, and they have to be accountable to the public. And so when they have to divulge that they are investing in war, in genocide, in oil, in the destruction of our planet, in order to hold on to these endowments that are bigger and bigger so that they can become more and more private. I mean, it's pretty awful. And also because a lot of the donations that they take in means that people with other interests have a hold on what they can force the institutions to do. So, they say, we will continue to support your endowment or donate to the institution should you support these political views, or at least not speak out against particular political views or political certain types of politics. And that, of course, means that the institutions are not in any way neutral. And so if they are to divulge their divestments, they would be very clearly telling the world what it is that they are putting their weight and their support behind, using student tuition fees and public dollars.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like we have gotten so used to the financialization of everything, the financialization of our pensions, the financialization of rent, like the fact that real estate income trusts are extracting money from low income people and delivering 5% in more returns to investors is just like the most disgusting thing. And it's like this given that Canadian universities should have all of these investments. And it's like, what is actually with that? Like, this isn't the United States. These aren't Harvard and Yale and whatever else. Like these are public institutions that should have the money at hand. Like, I don't understand why a single institution is investing in anything that's more complicated than a GIC or government bonds. Like, where are we in the state of education that this is actually such a massive place that money is parked? And it's like the question about investing in Israel is one very tiny piece of these investments. There's also like broader investments in war in general. And, a lot of investment firm hedge funds and stuff will be like, okay, well, you don't want to be in too much war. So we'll hedge your funds or you'll hedge your investments and we'll spread them out everywhere. But it's also like environmental destruction. And then it's also real estate income trusts. And it's also, a lot of things that are making Canadians' lives worse, but then also people's lives worse around the world. So this is a really important fight. I'm so excited that the students are doing it. And also, like, the tiny little piece why this is so delicious at the University of Toronto is that, as I explained last week, this is all happening in a place called King's College Circle, which is a big circle. And for the last 3 years, it has been under total construction because the University of Toronto had to build a parking lot underneath it, which is like so obviously ridiculous, but whatever, fine, parking. And so this was supposed to be the year of the first time of since the construction that they were able to actually have convocation on the lawn at King's College Circle. So it's just kind of like, whew, damn, U of T. Suckers.
Well, they deserve it. Sorry, but
totally.
I mean, to be
shade of them, as the kids say here.
Yeah. What would they say? Shade of them?
Shay. Everything's shade of them, shade of that. That's how we say it. We've turned it into that in English at the home. I don't really know how they say it in the school, and I understand that it's an Arabic word. So there you go. But we're always saying that around here now. So shay to the University of Toronto.
Yeah, and like in the grand sort of tradition of student organizing, I mean, people have been trying to get institutions to divulge their investments for years and years, and so it's really great to see students continuing to force the issue at this really critical juncture, and so no public dollars and certainly no tuition dollars should be going towards the funding of genocide or any other destructive activities to humanity. And I am really, really proud of the students and faculty at my alma mater, and really disgusted with the intransigence of the people at the top. Fuck. UOIT, they are the example everyone should be following.
Totally. Okay, so it's kind of a grab bag of politics today because there's lots of different things going on. I just want to shout out the big news that is coming out of Mexico tonight. I'm sure, Sandy, you've seen this. Claudia Sheinbaum is the new president of Mexico, the first woman to lead a country in North America, and she defeated a conservative opponent. So that's all good news.
Very, very good news. And we're happy to see what happens there. She is also, it should be noted, like, that she has declared her support for Palestine too, which is a shift in the leaders in North America. So we'll see what sort of additional shifts that could lead to in terms of North American politics.
Now, Sandy, do you know what flag polling is?
No, not at all.
You haven't been around. Yeah, you haven't been around international students perhaps too much in the most recent years. So flagpoling is something that if you are, you have to. You have a temporary status in Canada and you're trying to apply for a change in that status, you do something that's called flagpoling, which is that you go to the United States and you come right back to Canada. And you can either do that in like a couple of hours or you can do it in 24 hours. And it allows you to not reapply or go through the paperwork of getting the application together because you're just going to like present yourself at the border. I know, like, if you've done any level of international travel and you've stayed somewhere for a long time, like it's kind of a normal thing that you have to do in countries where you have to like physically leave the country and then come back to the country to restart or reapply or whatever for your status. So flagpoling is something that happens in Canada and it's totally normal. And the feds have just announced that they're going to limit flagpoling to just 12 Canada-US border crossings.
What? Why?
Well, I think that this is like a part of a broader attack on international students in general. And I'm focusing more on students. Of course, it isn't just students, but this is the world I'm in. So I know the most of the students that, get all into a car together and they all flagpole when they have to, have a change in their status or reapply for something. But it just seems like yet another attack on temporary people in Canada. And it's feeding into like this broader kind of narrative of how shitty it is to live in Canada. This is also something I've seen go viral in the last couple of days of like a Colombian family saying that they're going to leave Canada because it's really shitty and they're going to go back to Colombia because it's better in Colombia. And it's really fascinating how there doesn't seem to be any like serious reflection on the state of things in this country as we're seeing like the churn of our oppressive and violent system on temporary residents in this country. There was news last week of a smuggling ring from BC to the United States on freight trains. Again, not really getting tons of news. Yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Some 40 or so people on 2 different trains have been spotted. So who knows how many more had actually been doing that. And they were packed into packaging to be able to evade Canada Border Services Agency and then the United States authorities. And, we know that more and more people are leaving Canada, especially migrants who maybe came here first or maybe came here and went back. And of course, people have family in both countries. So it's not really all that surprising that people would move back and forth between Canada and the United States. But it just seems like there's no adult conversation about the state of things in this country for people who come under the impression that maybe Canada is as good as it says it is internationally.
Wow, that's really, really concerning because I think, obviously as things continue to fall apart in this country with the lack of anyone sort of steering the ship at the top here and making good decisions that will benefit our population, there's more and more blame being placed on migrant communities and in particular international students. I've been seeing it all over the place online, permeating WhatsApp groups, and it's scary. It's really scary, especially at a time right now when there's a lot of cover for white supremacists who are targeting marginalized communities. There's a lot of cover for them right now. Folks aren't focusing on white supremacist communities and white supremacist organizing and how well they are organizing and are able to carry out their attacks. And that makes me very nervous. So I'll certainly be continuing to watch that news.
Yeah. And when we had also Doug Ford this past week blaming immigrants on a shooting that happened at a Jewish girls' school in Toronto this past week. Mm-hmm. And, there was definitely some attention on that. Although even the way that the journalists covered it was like repeating what he said as if there's any fucking truth at all. Like as if, the news is not that, again, the Premier of Ontario is saying something about a legal case, a criminal proceeding that he has literally no inside information on at the fuck all, and just disparages all immigrants for bringing their stuff to Canada. it's like, it's so enraging. And then like when you suggest like, oh, well, maybe this is like the work of a Canadian, like, which is statistically speaking more likely the case. People like online will actually come after you and say like, uphold that racist narrative. And so we've got this coming from the top, from the premier of the province.
Yeah, it's pretty abhorrent. And I think, we've spoken before on this podcast about our fears about the cover that the ways that we talk about anti-Semitism as how anti-Semitism is misconstrued as equivalent to being against Zionism is something that is in itself anti-Semitic, because it provides really broad cover for white supremacist organizers, neo-Nazi organizers who would go after Jewish communities. And I'm really nervous about that happening right now as we see attacks on Jewish schools, and we don't, if there's anybody like waiting in the wings to do that from white supremacist neo-Nazi communities, they certainly have a lot of cover right now to do so.
Well, and also like it's never out of vogue to go after those people, like we can and we should wait and find out the details, because the details will be important, and it'll be important for the community itself to know, and it'll be important for the general public to know. And, that is its own kind of situation, and it's playing itself out. And maybe we'll know, or maybe we won't really know, because the cops are really bad at their job, right? But like, to deny that this is a moment where white supremacists who are always waiting for that moment to do violence and to create fear and to threaten marginalized communities, and in this case, the Jewish community. And again, maybe they didn't do it. Maybe it's not a committed skinhead, but those folks are always operating and always organizing. Like, that is what happens quietly when you don't see it all the time in the news, because guess the fuck what? We don't actually have very many journalists looking at this stuff these days. And so, I think it's really, really important to watch what's going on and to see if we find out any information. There was a name given finally for someone who shot at a synagogue in Montreal, I think back in November. And I think that the name only came out like a week and a half ago. And the individual is also arrested at the same time as having stolen goods in a stolen car. Which is like, again, what is going on there? Can we unpack this? Is there something else to know? Is this a hate crime and also something else? Or what's happening here? We're getting so little information about this stuff. And it is really, really, really brutal, because it matters. It's scaring people, obviously. But also it has bigger implications too, because we know groups like CJA, the Canadian Jewish Israel Affairs Committee, or Israel Jewish Affairs Committee, are constantly trying to make this about Palestine and about anti-Israel organizing. And it's just like, oh my God, it's, so not helpful for them to conflate Judaism and Zionism, these fucking assholes. But of course, they've got access to power that most of us do not have. And so that's what happens, because it helps the status quo. So anyway, pay attention and find out, see what we can find out from this stuff. And it's just like abhorrent to just so quickly. I've seen so many people quickly be like, oh, it's not white supremacists. It's like, maybe it's not, but let's go after them anyway. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to know another way that the Ontario government was shitty this week?
Of course.
I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000 ways, but here's one. They have implemented a new requirement to graduate from high schools. Now, there's so many things that you could change within the curriculum, I am sure, that would benefit people who are in elementary, middle, secondary school. What do you think it was?
Oh, okay. So sadly, I know, but let me see if I can guess something else. Was it about how to sell beer as a lemonade stand in Ontario?
No, but that's the only important thing happening in Ontario, apparently, if you are to listen to the government. So that's probably coming next. But no, they haven't done that yet.
I want you to talk about this, and I want folks who are not in Ontario to think about whether or not they're seeing this kind of thing rear its head in your province, because I think that it's probably going to be something that will rear its head in your province, and we just happen to have the avant-goût from Ontario. So, Sandy, what are they forcing on the kids this time?
Well, now there will be a brand new requirement to pass a financial literacy test. And so if you're not in Ontario, there is like one test that is required that you must, like a standardized test that students must pass in order to graduate, which is the literacy test. And so now they are adding a financial literacy test. They didn't give too much information as to what that means. It just says that as part of the grade 10 math course, they're going to need to demonstrate practical skills and proficient application of knowledge in financial literacy skills.
Damn. So like you have to go open your own bank account or something in front of your teacher.
I don't know. I mean, the ministry answering questions from journalists said that that the students will need to learn how to create and manage a household budget, how to save for a home or asset, and how to protect themselves from financial fraud.
Okay, I think like how many times have we done episodes literally on financial literacy?
Like 1,000 times, like 1,001 times, maybe 1,002 times.
This is Sandy's favorite topic.
Too many times. It is my least favorite topic. I like railing against it, but I don't think we need to like rehash episodes that we've had in the past. But what I do think is like really quite interesting is the fact that this came out in 2024 when it was like a thing that everyone was talking about like a decade and a half ago. It's like, okay, cool. Thanks for catching up. But also I think it's really funny that this came out at around the same time that we're seeing all of this news about Google's hallucinations as it rolled out its artificial intelligence responses to search queries. And I'm like, just like thinking, you're probably thinking like, Sandy, how is that related? Financial literacy, Google telling people to put glue on their pizza. And if you haven't heard the news, I will explain what that means. But how are those two things related? Google AI and financial literacy? I'm just like, the world is changing. Yes, yes. And looking at the amount of things that we can shift in a curriculum to make sure that we are preparing students who are going through elementary, middle, and secondary school, or heck, even post-secondary education, to make sure that they are prepared for the world that they are about to enter. Like, financial literacy is the thing. Like, maybe like how to be involved politically so that you don't keep getting fucked by capitalism. Maybe that's something that's important. But also what's really important is like the literacy of how to understand what's real and what's not in a world where all of this sort of guard posts that we used to have around that stuff is fading away really, really quickly.
Well, and it's not as if like the kind of questions that we're asking students to demonstrate their financial prowess even exist. Like how can you, middle income student, ever afford a home? How can you, lower income student, ever afford a car? Like the answer is I can't. It's not I can give you a fucking fictional budget and here's how I budget myself into getting past this out of control housing market. That's not how it works. And so it's so fascinating to me that, under the guise of something like a standardized test, and standardized testing is oppressive and shitty and not fair to students and a waste of teachers' times, but okay, fine, another standardized test. And in that test, they're going to be asking questions that are as subjective as like saving up for a large asset purchase or something like this, or demonstrating how you can do a household budget. Like, I know that you have other ideas of what could be a more useful use of the students' time in terms of what they're learning. But for me, like, okay, so you said that I just finished this book. The book that I've written is the second book in a series called Canada in Decline. The first book hasn't come out yet. It's coming out in the summer. And in this book, all I talk about is how everything has been shifted in Canada to tell you, to teach you, to insist to you that up is actually down. And unless you answer the question, what is up, with the answer down, you are told that it is your fault, that you're the problem, that you don't understand how like the world works. Meanwhile, all of the financialization of every aspect of our lives, the fact that every second of our life, someone is either making money off us in some way related to our food or our telecommunications or our rent or our transit or our roads, like whatever, all of it is like upside down land. And these standardized tests on financial literacy amount to imposing and testing students on the propaganda. Literally, that's all it is like, how well have you consumed the shit that we are now asking you to spew back at us? And if you are a bad shit consumer, you might not do very well on this test.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's so offensive. It's so offensive to like look at the landscape of the way that people are struggling economically and to say the problem is you just didn't learn how to budget when you were 15. Mm-hmm. And if you had learned how to budget when you were 15, you would be able to afford a 400 square foot shoebox for $1 million at 21 years old. Like no amount of standardized testing that is like, here's how much money you need to put away to afford a loaf of bread that is price fixed by Loblaws is going to help you with the fact that the bread is price fixed by Loblaws. You know, there's something else that needs to be done here. But here I am again ranting about financial literacy. You made me do it, Nora.
Sorry. I couldn't resist. I know there's new listeners. I know the old listeners love this. This is one of your classic hits. So there you go. But you see another need for the students to know something, and probably not just the students. So what did we learn this week from the future of AI as Google has been using it?
Oh my God. Okay. So all of the problems with like all of our information, again, we've talked about this before too, right? Like all of our information and the way that we gather information really being controlled by these private corporations like Google, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, and so on, making choices about where they want to move next. And if you are a new listener and you haven't heard us rant about this before, you can go to some old episodes. But the Coles Notes is essentially, we've said, like, look, in the past when we would, be amassing new types of information, we would make a public way for us to access them, like libraries, and create systems and mechanisms for the public to access that information and to make sure that information was categorized in a way that we could access it publicly and that it could benefit all of society. Yes? Right now, yes. And right now, much of that work digitally is being taken up by private institutions, which means that if Google shifts something with its algorithm, as people have noticed in the past few years, like, Google search really sucks now. I need to add Reddit to the end of everything that I search to search for something for real, to find like a real answer. Like Google shifts the way that it interacts with us as that like pseudo librarian, and all of a sudden we're kind of shit out of luck because there's been no public entity that has kind of taken up the mantle of making sure that all of the information that we're all putting onto the web is accessible in a way that we can really trust and that we can scrutinize the back end of and make sure that we understand what's happening. Well, that's now gone a step further. As this AI race is happening, Google has rolled out in the last week or so AI answers to search queries. So some of you probably have seen this, that when you Google something now, the little box at the top, you know how you used to get like a bunch of ads first and then you get into the links? Now, before the ads is like a few boxes that will be like an AI response to what your search query is. The problem is that after this rollout, it became very clear very quickly that the AI answers aren't exactly reliable. They hallucinate, which is the tech term for when an artificial intelligence is providing answers that like make no sense. But this was rolled out in a wide basis, and so people who were putting in who were making some searches, like we're getting these weird responses from Google. Like someone put in a search of like, how do I make sure that my cheese doesn't fall off of my pizza, the pizza that I'm making? And the AI response was to mix in a little Elmer's glue.
Oh,
which
that seems bad.
I mean, I don't know. You're Italian. Maybe there's something that I don't understand here that you could inform me of in terms of pizza making. But I think that that's a pretty clear hallucination. And there's, I mean, just look up the news on this. There's like all sorts of really weird responses that Google was giving to stuff like the benefits of nuclear war, for example.
Oh.
To how many, the health benefits of tobacco, how many rocks you should be eating a day, all sorts of really weird stuff. And in a context where like this is where we are headed, not to mention like fake news and the proliferation of propaganda farms that are creating bots on our social media to try to influence our opinions one way or another. It's like, fuck financial literacy. I need to know what's real, you know? And I think that we should be preparing students to understand that what they now have access to on the internet, it's not just like, you can't trust Wikipedia because everybody can edit it. It's like literally you need to double, triple check everything that you see online, whether it's information that you're reading, a video that you are watching, an image that you are seeing. Like, we need literacy around fucking reality. And I mean, financial literacy, that's like, God, I mean, what a joke. Like, can we pay attention to the world that we're living in and preparing students to live in that world?
Yeah, no doubt. You know, I always think of my father, who is a librarian. And so I grew up with a father who was a librarian. And, you know, when Wikipedia came around, he was always so angry that it was not going to be reliable. And it was akin to taking a bunch of different encyclopedias and opening all the pages, ripping them out and throwing them up in the air and on the floor, and then you having to kind of sort through the pages that you have and figure out what's real and not real. And Wikipedia is an interesting experiment because by and large, the information there is good because there is a verification system built into it. It's not AI actually, right? It's, you know, it's people editing and then re-editing and then re-editing, which is not a perfect system, but is definitely better than relying on, you know, here's our iterative AI telling you to fucking eat 6 pebbles every day for your gut health, which you should not do. I wonder, like, at what point does this become so full of shit that people won't turn to the internet for information anymore? Do you know, like, are we swinging back away from this really incredible system of knowledge being so unreliable that people are going to want to go back to the stuff that's published in books or, you know, stuff that is verifiable? Or do you think, Sandy, we're totally on a path of just being fucked when it comes to people knowing, you know, that you shouldn't stick a fork in a socket or you shouldn't get a female to female electrical cord? That'll cause an explosion, you know, like...
I mean, I don't know that we're going to turn away from like the internet entirely, but like this idea that I'm going to look up the name of the writer while I say this so that I can say it on the podcast properly. But the person who came up with the term enshittification, have you heard that term? I'm sure you have. Yeah.
Of course. I believe that was Cory Doctorow.
That is correct. Cory Doctorow. The enshittification of the internet, I think we're only going to get farther and farther along in that because
we're only going to enshittify further.
Yeah, we're only going to enshittify further as venture capital and big money becomes more and more important, and profit becomes more and more important to all of these internet things that were birthed from I want to make a cool thing like microblogging. And then it's like, oh gosh, now we have to make it fucking profitable. And then it becomes bullshit, right? It's like, as that cycle, I don't see it stopping. So I don't know that we're going to turn away from the internet entirely, but I do think that, something has to shift because, who wants to use Google anymore if that's what it's going to be doing? There's other options. There are other search engines that you can use, or you can just, go to the library if that's the place that you need to go to. And the library has a search engine that you can use online. So maybe it's that we go back to finding specific places to find what we need and connecting with people directly instead of using a place like Facebook or Twitter to mediate our connections. But I don't know, man. It's like, gosh, the internet was great and terrible and great and terrible. And now it just seems like to all be coalescing into terrible. And, I don't know. It's not looking good.
Well, it goes back to this whole your whole imaginated utopia of the federal government actually funding something useful. And, you say go to the libraries. I don't know if you've been in an elementary school library recently or a high school library recently, but there are so few books in libraries these days.
What?
And there's so many more computers.
What are you saying to me, Nora? Don't say that. What?
It's really shocking. I really, really hate it. I hate it. I remember the first time, and maybe you were with me. We were touring the Lakehead campus in Orillia, Ontario. So there's a branch plant of Lakehead University. Remember?
I do.
And the students were like, "Here's our library," and we were like, "What the fuck is this? There's literally no books here." And they're like, "Oh, it's computers. We got computers, right?" And, I was just in Regina and I got to go to two wonderful bookstores, including Stafford Books. And so hello to them. And you should check that out if you're around Regina. And it's just like these amazing artifacts, these books, when something gets written down, it's stuck there and it's not perfect. It's not fallible, but there's a process to produce that. I just wrote a book and it's going to be edited by several people and they're going to go through all of my footnotes and say, I don't think that this is what this footnote says, or this is not a very good source. Maybe you should fix the source. I mean, ideally they're like, wow, Nora, these are amazing. You're so fucking good at this. You're not going to have to change anything. Right, folks? Right? We'll see. But this is something where we absolutely need a public intervention, and public libraries are doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy lifting, and they're saving people from overdoses, and they're giving people tool libraries, and they're giving people seeds, and they're giving people access to the internet who might not have it. I mean, if you've been in a library recently, that they are still really amazing hubs, unless you live in Quebec City, and they've been on strike for 6 weeks. So solidarity with UFCW folks there. And, where is the public conversation on what is useful information? What is information we can trust? Especially information like day-to-day things that you might not otherwise know. It's one thing to get the date of William the Conqueror wrong, which is impossible because everyone knows that it was 1066 that something happened related to him. But, on health stuff, on what you should eat, on how you should feel good, on personal interaction, I would like a curated national service for that. That seems like something that is a completely normal national service that could be created, and that there are a ton of nerds that would probably flock to be able to work in something like this.
Yeah, it just seems like the most obvious thing that should be happening right now. But I don't know, maybe all the politicians are using the bots too. So maybe it all is benefiting them and nothing is real. And we just have to tear it down and, have a revolution or something.
I mean, okay, fine, but we live in this moment where everything is, it's like, okay, we can call it enshittification. And for sure, like when I open Facebook on my phone, it only works literally a third of the time. Otherwise the text is too big and I can't read it. Like it runs over. I can't, it's like, yeah, Facebook is shitty. I can't even use it on my browser because it keeps logging me out saying that there's been an error. So yeah, things are enshittifying, but there's a better word for that. And that is called decay. Okay. Shit is in decay, and we can be cutesy about it. And no shade to Cory Doctorow because he does great work, and he's one of the few people that thinks well out there. My God, but it's just decay. We are in an era of decay, and it is not at all surprising that decay is accompanied with mass disorienting and mass misinformationing our fucking society. That is what decay is going to be driven by. And so, I don't know, like part of me hopes that there's interventions we can do to stop decay. But then the other part of me kind of knows that once you're in the fucking mode of decay, it's hard to get out of it.
It is, unless you fucking spend some resources taking a look at what's happening with the decay and how to fucking stop it. And, instead we just rather teach people how to add, and hopefully that'll solve all of the problems with our world.
Well, I mean, if you can add 5 and 5 to be 10, you probably could overthrow Doug Ford. So let's maybe not get too down on it.